Okay, I think it's worth writing a comment that we made in the previous video. Let A be a square matrix. So let A be a square, meaning same number of rows and columns. The determinant's actually not, it's not defined, it doesn't exist for non-square matrices, but let A be a square matrix. And then the following is true, and this is the main reason why we care about determinants. It turns out that A inverse exists. A has an inverse if and only if the matrix A has a non-zero determinant. That turns out to be true for all matrices with an equal number of rows and columns. So that's kind of the big thing that we're going to do with determinants, is we're going to be able to tell whether or not a matrix is an inverse or not. And as we've seen, that already tells us a lot about a system. We know that a system has a unique solution if there's an inverse, and there's many other things that we can say. Okay, so that's one of the big places where we'll use a determinant. The last thing I want to mention, and this is for all of you who have taken Calc 3, you've used determinants in Calc 3 whether you know it or not. So in Calc 3, you often take what's called a cross product of two vectors. Let's say we have v1, which is the vector x1, y1, z1, and v2, which is the vector x2, y2, z2. And then you can compute what's called the cross product. That's a way that you can get a third vector out of these two. And the way that you do it is actually you take the determinant with the unit coordinates I, j, k. So these are the unit vectors in the x, y, and z direction. And then you put in the vectors v1 and v2. So x1, y1, z1, x2, y2, z2, and so on. And then in this case, since the top row is a little different than the other rows, because the top rows actually consist of vectors, the second and third row consist of the components of the vectors. So you usually expand along the first row, but this is finding the determinant. Right, so we find I times y1 z2 minus z1 y2 minus, remember that you switch, it's minus j times x1 z2 minus x2 z1 plus k times x1 y2 minus y1 x2. And so that's going to be your cross product that you get. Okay, so this is an example where determinants actually have already come up if you've taken Calc 3.